Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your favorite podcast, Jailbreak Africa, where we are trying to liberate African minds for entrepreneurial success. And of course, I'm your host, Steve Tadzoka, and we come your way every Friday at 6 o'clock GMT plus 2 time. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, this is the podcast that you want to make sure that you've subscribed to. Share the video and turn on the notifications bell so that when we upload new content, you don't miss out. And of course, I'm joined by the man himself, as always, Jerry Monyazung, the chartered vendor. How are you, comrade?
I'm okay.
You're good?
So?
All right. So today's conversation is going to be interesting. Remember last week we were talking about a number of issues. And one of the key issues that stood out were the issues to do with the banks, and then the other one to do with the properties. So seems like today we are going to be running with the properties, because there's a lot that has been happening in and around the properties in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Africa in general. So the one that's the highlight for me is the High Court ruling that was made by our own local courts. They are saying that if someone has been a tenant for 30 years, consistently paying their rent, plus the operating expenses, including the utility services bills, right? After 30 years, they are entitled to ownership of that property.
How?
I don't know I don't know if they've just made a new law or they've just interpreted a law that existed but we didn't know. So what it means is, if I rent out this building for the next 30 years,
yes,
paying the utility bills, because I'm the one who's using the electricity.
You can now own the building.
Yeah, after 30 years, I'll be owning the building.
As easy as that.
What's your take on that?
I don't think it's feasible.
Why?
Why should you actually own when you're renting?
Maybe they're saying 30 years it's too long a period for one paying rent and the utility bills, that the property automatically will begin to belong to them.
But a tenant will remain a tenant.
I don't know what they're trying to do. And I remember from the previous conversation, we spoke about how these big businesses, they don't build properties of their own. They rent.
Exactly.
And there are companies that if we were to tell them that they rent the buildings that they rent, people would not believe it, because they've been there for the longest.
A big company.
So does it mean that they now own those buildings?
Yeah. Isn't it another 3 months notice? If it's real, it's going to be a landmark. It's something which is going to cause a lot of pandemonium in the economy.
Okay, what do you expect to happen? Let's try and analyze the
most
the
of the
aftermath.
people lose their properties, but for you to actually buy a property, isn't it there's supposed to be a willing seller?
Yeah.
So is there a willing seller in this kind of situation?
Apparently,
or probably the media interpreted it in a wrong way.
Maybe, I don't know.
Because our journalists nowadays,
they want to sell the paper.
They want to sell the paper.
So they'll give you a kinky headline so that you buy it.
Because to me, I would rather comment after reading the whole story and you actually hear what the judge actually said on that one.
Yeah,
because probably it was a debate sense. And it was because at the end of the day, we don't want to give people false news.
Yeah.
And to me, it's because probably the judge was trying to interpret something. Because for them to go to the courts, I don't think the person actually went to the court saying I was paying rentals for the next 30 years. Therefore, I actually own the property. I don't think any normal person will actually visit the courts with that kind of a case.
Yeah.
I strongly feel like probably this person had actually bought the property or something had actually happened.
Or maybe it was a rent to buy kind of arrangement.
Exactly.
Yeah, probably. But then also, maybe let's take it face value. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the other party, which is the winning party, where somebody gets a property, they suddenly own a property after 30 years of renting. Let's use a simple example, a car. Let's say a Honda Fit, on average, it's going for how much? 5,000, right? Let's say 5,000 for a Honda Fit or a Toyota Aqua, 5,000, right? Then you rent the car for $500 a month to do your school runs and etc. So what it means is after 10 months, you will have ultimately paid the 5,000.
Exactly.
So then the judge comes out and say, if you rent a Honda Fit for a year, buying the fuel and servicing the vehicle, then the vehicle belongs to you.
But you're still renting.
Is it a fair judgment?
It's not a fair judgment.
In my opinion, I think it's fair.
Why?
I've paid the full amount of buying the same
But you're
car.
renting.
Yeah, I was renting, but I've paid you the full amount.
Right now, getting to Boredo, there are people who are renting houses for $4,000, $5,000.
Yeah, per month.
Per month, residential. So can you say after? Does it mean that when you don't know? Some people prefer rent.
Yeah.
Because it's not like everyone who is renting who is foolish. That's the biggest mistake which most of the people make. Someone can actually decide to say, no, there's no way I can buy a property for 400,000 at once. I would rather rent that property for 3,000 or 4,000. Which simply means that for 4,000, after 10 months, they spent 40,000. After how many, I don't know how many, the next 10 months, these are years. So someone can say it's a choice that I don't want to own any property for different reasons. They want to rent, just like what also companies does. So I don't think that by just renting, because already you're using that property and the ownership hasn't been transferred to you.
All right.
So you still remain a tenant, you still remain renting that car.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I think more detail about this story will give the people once we've read the full article and when we get the narrative behind the context, so that we avoid making assumptions. But it would be a very interesting ruling if it were to happen. Maybe they borrowed it from another country or something.
So what are some of the amazing or landmark rulings which have been done by the High Court of late?
Do I know of any? Did you come across
the most popular is the 3 months notice, which they've actually reversed it now.
They've reversed it?
Yeah, they've reversed it now.
Okay, why?
The ZUA ruling.
Yeah.
Now they are not. It's no longer, because you remember that ruling was you can actually give someone 3 months notice. Then you can actually give someone 3 months salary. Let's say I no longer want 20 of my employees, or just give them 3 months salary. Then they're gone immediately. Yeah. Without actually, even if they've worked for 20 years,
you can just give them 3 months notice, and then they without any gratuity.
Exactly.
So by reversal, what are they saying? By reversal,
right now they are now saying the usual way of actually saying when you want to, you can no longer fire someone based on that, because that one would fire someone even if you didn't want to go for hearing with someone. We just give them 3 months, give them a notice. 3 months, they're done. Just say, I'm not retrenching you based on this law. You're going.
Oh, that's interesting. And I've heard a lot of people complain though about the 3 months notice. Say, I have to turn in 3 months in advance to tell the company that I'm working for that I'm going to be leaving, so that the company can prepare, hand over, take over, replacing me and all. But then when it comes to them firing me, you just wake up one day and you're gone.
These days it's the other way around.
The company has to notify you.
Right now, the company has to notify the employees that I'm cutting you off. But employees, they wait until when it's 30th of the month, after receiving their salary, then you never see them again.
You ask for them maybe following week, say, where is this person?
Exactly. But I've got companies now, I know of certain companies, when you do that, they'll invoice you.
3 months?
No, for the notice. If it was 3 months, it was 2 weeks, it was 1 month, they'll invoice you. After invoicing you, they'll start following up on their date. If you don't pay, they'll make sure that they contact the bureau, that I don't know what's the name of that company, which does blacklisting of people who don't pay. Yeah. So they'll go there, they'll blacklist you. So and when you now want to open a bank account, you hear that, no, your employer, you've got a date. Credit bureau, exactly.
Wow. That's very
so these days it's now the opposite. Employees, they just disappear.
Wow.
Without giving notice. That's the trend which is there. They'll just wake up tomorrow, you never see them again. You try calling them, their phones are switched off. Just know that they've resigned.
Okay, so but is there an option to say maybe there's a particular employee who is disturbing the productivity of others, but then the law requires you to house them for 3 months before you dismiss them? Can I send them home and still pay them their 3 months salary from home, but tell them please don't show up at our premises?
No, but if someone really is disturbing and someone has got a case, why can't you handle it using that kind of case, like for example,
disciplinary.
this is gross incompetence, gross insubordination.
Yeah.
There are a lot of accusation which you can give to that person. Suspend them 14 days without salary, dismiss them within the 14 days, done.
But you know that if you don't properly charge an employee, the labor court is ready. They've got people who are ready to pounce on you. Because remember, how you come up with the charges for the different offenses committed by employees, it's not entirely up to the organization. There's an element of the Labor Act that applies to say this is a minor offense, serious offense, gross misconduct for worthy of immediate dismissal. So if you then charge someone with gross a gross offense, right, and then you immediately discharge them, but then according to the classification of that offense, it's a minor offense, the labor code will be out to get you.
That's why you need to create your own code of conduct in a company.
So that if they are in
when
breach
people
of your
cross
own...
the line, you shoot.
But what does law say about the national act superseding any organizational act, to say a code of conduct is not superior than the Labor Act?
But the thing now is, even if you're going to fight, even if you win, to me, so long if you're out of this company, the better. Because the thing is, do you know what? There are other people who are really unproductive. Yeah. And unfortunately, our labor law in Africa, it actually disadvantages the employer rather than the... You've ever checked the labor laws in America? In America, if someone said you're fired, you're fired.
That's interesting.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
They've got tough labor laws in terms of... because the thing is... I'll just give you an example. Another ruling which was made, or another introduction which was done in the labor, which actually says, if a lady joins the company today, probably, we know for ladies they've got a funny way of tying their stomachs to hide if they're pregnant. So if a lady joins the company today, spend 2 months, when they are due to go for their labor, in 2 or 3 months after joining the organization, the labor court is now saying you should actually pay that person in full whilst they are on 3 months maternity leave. Do you think that it brings production in Africa?
No, it doesn't. If you look at it from a social perspective, it would make sense to say, okay, giving birth is national service, repopulating the country, etc. And it's not like she chose to be a woman.
And they are also
if you look
saying
at the economics of it,
and they're also saying they no longer mind the number of, they are saying even if you're going to say every year you're pregnant, the company is still entitled to pay you.
That's when we find technicalities
exactly
and fire you.
And that's why you see some of the people now, they are now asking in interviews, are you married? Do you have a family? Are you planning to have one? Then automatically you are now out of the interview. So you can be removed even whilst you haven't even got the job. People will see that, okay, newlywed. Okay,
they're probably
they are planning for it. So no.
Yeah, remember, we're African families. We don't allow for people to go for more than a year without a baby after getting married. Well, the first one needs to come immediately.
Yeah, but
the other ones to follow, we can pardon you.
Yeah, but you were saying something about national service. What are you saying?
So they're saying that with women giving birth, it's a service to the country. Because there are countries right now that are in dire situations. Like, I'll give you an example, Japan. Japan has got an older population that is bigger than the youthful population. So eventually what it means is, according to any functional government system, the older population becomes a responsibility of the government through social security services, right? So who funds the social security services? It's the tax from the working class. So if you have a bigger age in retirement than the working force, what it means is the tax burden on the working force will be bigger than what the expenses in the retired population will be. And eventually there are issues that will then start to come up that they cannot afford maybe the healthcare for the old. The old people's homes will not be serviced adequately. Resources and amenities for old people will not be provided adequately. So now it's enshrined in the constitution that if a woman is giving birth to the younger generation in repopulating the country. It's a service to the country because it has long-term benefits. So it's national service. So they are allowed to give birth as many a number of times as they want, even at the expense of the company.
Okay.
I'm sure.
But are we Japan?
We are not Japan, we are Zimbabwe.
We're talking about Zimbabwe in Africa.
And we are in Africa.
We're in Africa.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You know, I understand where you're coming from as an entrepreneur. Why? Because there's a certain space and time where, as a business person, you are at a point where you cannot afford to pay for unproductive stuff.
Exactly.
And here you are, unfortunate or fortunate of circumstances, that you find this brilliant young woman who has joined the team, very active, brilliant ideas to the table, but then 3-4 months down the line, they fall pregnant. It's national service.
Exactly.
Now you are forced to pay for their full salary 3 months, but there is no one who is doing what she was doing. If you then recruit someone else, you now have a double salary to pay for the same job, whilst you have another person that you're paying who's not productive and contributing anything to the company.
Exactly.
And it puts our entrepreneurs at a conundrum whether they should or should not hire women.
Right now, they are not even. I consult for companies. They no longer hire women.
And we are
indirectly.
We are in Women's Month. We are
Exactly.
celebrating women.
Yeah,
but then we have been
but
put in a
because
space
of those kind of laws now. Because remember, there's a lot of contradiction going on in this world.
Yeah.
It's 50-50. When women are benefiting, 50-50. But when women are not longer benefiting, we are women. So is this world fair?
No, if you look at it, it's not fair.
Like right now, there's a war. Zimbabwe and now battlefront. Soldiers are needed. You hear that now. When they are in the camps, women and men are the same. Same opportunities, same ranks. But when there's now a real war, like even when it happened 2017, you noticed when we had our coup, which was not coup.
Yeah.
That's what they said. It was a what was it called?
It was a
restoration.
Operation Restore Legacy.
Operation Restore Legacy.
Yeah.
If you notice what happened, did you see any women?
Yeah, there were very few women soldiers. Actually, the women who were there were the soldiers who were already trained for...
No, I'm saying, did you see when things were still red on that very day of 2017?
Yeah.
Did you see any women in the streets?
Absolutely not.
Zero.
Yes.
Because things were what? But when they are back in the camp now, when it was now day when our former president resigned, that's when you see women now jumping up and they're coming up and everything. Yeah. So, is it fair to really say women and men are the same?
Well, to answer you, let me give you an example that's happening right now. There's the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. When Russia seems to have maybe undermined the power of Ukraine to retaliate, and they then lost a couple of ground men as a result of that. So now they needed to remunerate their ground force. Do you know that children and women were crossed over the borders to safer countries? All the men within the fighting age and ability, they remained and were given...
Isn't it Ukraine? It's Ukraine.
It's Ukraine, yeah. So they were now taking ordinary civilians, men in particular, and they were now in the battlefront without training. The women and the children were crossed over the borders to save countries.
So that's my question. Are we... This gender equality, is it real?
It's real in certain contexts. Well, it's a self-saving statement, like you rightfully said. There are instances where equality applies.
When it's job opportunities, they say no, we are equal.
Yeah.
But when the job is now difficult, even at the job, we want minors.
Yeah.
They say no, 50-50 because it's still a job opportunity. But when someone is about to go underground
to do
now,
the work now,
then they say, why can't you? Can you leave women going underground whilst men are watching?
You see now, I remember there's always this thing that circulates on social media. It's a joke. You know how when a truckload of cement or other resources comes by, there are always people required to offload that.
Exactly.
So I've often seen a post that says, we are looking for a group of strong women. We need to offload 20 tons of cement from a truck.
Exactly.
Are they able then to be as competent as men? Because really, it's one thing talking about this conversation at human level, say we are both humans, and then it's another conversation when we talk about ability based on our biological makeup. Because honestly, naturally, men come biologically more fit and more built than women because of the tasks that are expected of a man, and women appear to be smaller than men in size and in biological makeup because of the tasks expected out of women.
Personally, I strongly feel like the maker knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
That's why he said, no, this guy is supposed to have a lot of muscle because you're expected to do the hard task.
You know, I was watching this documentary. I'm forgetting the name of the documentary. I wanted to understand how we came to this position, because remember, even back then, men are the ones who would go to work, they would do the manual works, etc.
Yeah.
And women would remain behind and take care of the family.
Huh?
Exactly. So I was watching this documentary trying to understand how we came to be in this space, until I realized that it was actually the founding fathers of America when they introduced the Federal Reserve Bank and the tax system. That's when they realized, why are we taxing half the population, men only? What if we take women and put them in the workforce
same
so
bracket.
that we tax them? And then they started exciting
so they were putting
women.
the same bracket.
Yeah, so they started the exciting women into getting into work. That's what the documentary said. Whether it's fact or myth, I don't know. But that's how they started exciting women to going to work. Because remember, by population, by numerical count, men are fewer than women. So if it means that the tax basket is filled up with men,
we're
going to
very
work.
few people.
Exactly. So if we want to increase the tax collections at that time, what do? We get more people to go to work. Who are the other people that we're going to excite to go to work? It's women, because they're sitting at home. So let's get them into the workforce, and then we tax them, and that's how the tax bracket grew and the tax collection.
But still on that, in Zambia, do you know that labor in Zambia, even a house girl actually knows, house girl, house boy, they actually knows the term gratuity.
Wow.
And what they say in Zambia is, someone works for 1 year, 2 years, they're working for you. You're supposed to pay them when they're leaving, whether they fired them or they've resigned. Then they've it actually helps in terms of continuity also, because employees in Zambia, they are compliant in terms of serving their notice, because they know that there's gratuity. So they usually serve notice for them to get gratuity.
Okay.
And gratuity is 25% of the basic salary.
Okay.
So, but we're saying almost everyone, whether someone has worked for 5 years or someone has worked for a year, you have to give them 25% of their basic salary. Guess what employers are not doing in Zambia? Whether if you're earning 20,000 kwacha, 20,000 kwacha is around $1,000.
Okay.
If you're earning such amount of money, what they'll do is they'll give you $100 or $50 as basic salary. $950 is allowances.
Wow, that's very interesting. You know, people will always find a way to cheat the system. Do you know that in Zimbabwe, right? There are those tax brackets that are given by Zimra.
Exactly.
You know, they tax the basic.
The basic.
So what other companies were now doing, because the employees were crying for and saying, you know what, the tax bracket is taking long to be revised. So even if you increase our salary, you are also increasing the money that which we are taxed. So what did companies do? They kept the basic constant, then started adding allowances, responsibility allowance, the infamous COVID allowance, the exposure to whatever
are still
allowance.
COVID allowance.
And we are since past the COVID. Do you know, even, don't talk about companies, the biggest employer of the land, the government, was still and is still giving civil servants COVID allowance. It's only this year when the Minister of Finance
initially
announced
the
budget. Yeah.
But now it's not being taxed.
It's now taxed, yeah. They weren't taxing it, and civil servants were smiling all the way to the bank. They would get their $300, they collect it as $300 and taxed. So when they then later realized that, we are losing a lot of revenue, they said, okay, we are not going to remove the COVID allowance, but we are now taxing it.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, everyone is subjected to taxes.
Yeah, but what I just say in conclusion is our laws are supposed to be realistic and support the current crop of entrepreneurship, because some of these laws are not even designed for our economies. Remember, when we're talking of Africa, especially countries like Zimbabwe, much of what is happening in those countries is anchored by the SMEs. So these are small to medium enterprises. The entrepreneurs themselves, they also need to be supported.
That's very true.
For them to thrive in this kind of of economies. But you see, those laws they are for huge companies.
Yeah, it makes sense to those big companies because they can afford to pay unproductive
Big companies can actually afford to pay. The next 12 months, people are not working. They can still pay. But small companies can't.
Yeah, that's true. Do you know that I know of a very big financial institution? I know about it because I've got a relative who works there. Do you know that they were on study leave for an entire year? They were doing their masters. An entire year. What they simply had to do was to report to work for a week after every 3 months. But they were still getting their full salary.
But that's madness.
You see now.
But do you think, okay, fine, it's a big company. But do you think the same can be done in Europe?
It doesn't make sense, no.
The same can be done in America.
It wouldn't make sense.
Why is that these funny things are done in Africa?
I don't know.
That's where we are. We deserve
the whole
it.
idea of laziness. And also, I would like to believe that when some of these laws are put into place, they are supposed to do public consultations where they involve the affected stakeholders.
Exactly.
And do entrepreneurs actually have the time to go to these consultations and say, no, we object of that law, we cannot be paying for...
Do they even have that forum?
I don't think so.
Because we just hear
when was the last time
we just hear that there are budget consultations which are done, but
have you ever even filled out a survey online?
I've never even heard where the budget consultation will be done. The venue of that consultation, I don't know.
I know.
You're a journalist yourself.
It's done, yeah.
Where is it done?
But I want to be honest, on record, I've seen the profiles of the people who attend those.
Yeah.
They are not small to medium enterprises.
You see now.
Even the level of security that's there, it's actually intimidating. Because they start asking for your credentials before you even come in. But I'm just a small scale.
Exactly.
I own a printing shop just by the corner.
You need to consult vendors. You need to consult everyone.
Because they make part of the economy.
Because they say when a law is done, when something is done
without you,
it's not for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Yeah. Now, let's move on to the other topics related to properties. So remember last time we spoke about how properties are expensive in Zimbabwe, but then if you look at other places, the property market, it's better, it's lucrative. You can proudly say you're into real estate if you own 1 or 2 properties that you're spinning around. But in Zimbabwe, it's a different story. So unfortunately, we couldn't secure the guest that we had promised you, somebody who was well conversant with the properties market. But I got, the conversation picked up traction, and a lot of people were talking about it. And then there's a property consultant, a guru in South Africa, who made a TikTok video, and we're gonna play it for you now. Then we comment after the video has been played. So let's take a moment to play that video.
Hi there. By now I'm pretty sure you've seen the video of why is Sandton so cheap and Harare so expensive, and the complaining, let's call it bitching and moaning, about Zimbabwean property prices. Well, let me give you 4 pillars of the table and then put a tablecloth over that on my humble opinion. Well, firstly, scarcity. Zimbabwe has less than 300,000 registered properties in the deeds office, compared to 6 million in South Africa. So, 1, scarcity. Number 2, investment options. 55% of the value held within wealth management companies or asset management companies, pensions, insurance funds, whatever you want to call them, is in real estate. That gives them very limited opportunity, so they are safely storing value there. In South Africa, that number is less than 6%. So it's an abundant supply, and those who are demanding it are few and far between, as compared to Zimbabwe, where everybody is demanding the very same scarce assets. Number 3, input costs. To build in Zimbabwe is expensive. From cement to bricks to all of the infrastructure that you have to do off-site to deliver a product. So it is expensive inputs give you expensive outputs. Nothing serious there. Number 4, if you want to take the utility of a good, Utility means, what do you get out of it? For you to be in Zimbabwe, you are typically paying a higher price for a loaf of bread, a can of Coke, whatever it is that you're buying in Zim, you're going to be paying a higher price. So they're the 4 legs of the table. Now let's put a tablecloth on top of that table, our currency. The use of the American dollar. The American dollar is not our currency. It is not our friend in terms of competitiveness of pricing. So when you want to now, in a ravished economy, where, and I'm saying ravished because values have gone to zero with hyperinflation, then you brought back the US dollar, then you made that 1-to-1, and then the Zim dollar has gone where it's gone again. So I'm not being negative and just bearish for no point. But once you've got that scarcity, once you've got that expensive supply, and you've got the only thing that people can hold on to, money is moving and people are banking on property. So that's why you'll find Harare prices crazy when you think about Santa.
All right, so I came across that video on social media.
Interesting.
And then I thought, if we have got this analyst who gave us a very detailed and relatable example of what's happening, then we might not need somebody on the conversation.
But we'll need them. They'll come.
Yeah.
Probably we've got questions for him as well, but we'll bring an expert who can also analyze this.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the reasons. He was talking about scarcity. He mentioned some scary figures. Remember, he said there are less than 300,000 registered properties by our deeds office. In South Africa, there are over 6 million registered properties. So what it means is
scary.
Maybe to put context, he's not saying there are 300,000 houses in Zimbabwe. No, he's saying those that are registered with transferable title deeds of ownership.
Exactly.
They're just about 300,000. The rest, they're just on council session or land developer session. You don't have solid legal documentation that you own the property. So what it means is, if anyone is going to buy a property for investment, they want to buy something that is safe, that they can keep for a long time, and those properties are minimal. So what happens when, in business we talk of supply and demand? If the supply is minimum, the demand increases, and if the demand increases, the prices also skyrocket.
Exactly.
So that's part of the reasons why. And remember, we have got places that don't have title deeds up to this point. A lot of them. A lot of them. So what are we saying is Zimbabweans in terms of investing in properties when we don't have title deeds? Is it safe? 300,000, that's not a lot.
Yeah. Because investing, I'm actually scared to buy a property without title deeds. Because especially with the scandals, I've noticed most of the houses, nice houses, being destroyed by the city council.
It's so sad.
It's not good, and it's actually scary. Sometimes it's better off for me to invest that money into business rather than owning another property, because you can actually also, it's a big loss. But the comparison, although, did you actually factor that Zimbabwe's got how many people in terms of population? 17 million.
Yeah, roughly 17
and
million.
Saying South Africa has got around 52. So why is that there's no demand in South Africa for those 6 million properties?
Because people are accommodated. The government can afford to provide government accommodation.
Yeah, here there's no government accommodation.
Yes.
Okay, because I remember, I don't know if South Africa soldiers are they still staying, because I still remember when you grow up, my father was a soldier, and they used to stay in the barracks only.
Yeah.
They're not even allowed to stay or to walk wearing actually their camouflage. These days
we can see the camouflage hanging on the line. The soldier, the national fighter, stays in a room behind the
house. Because I think why they used to do that was because they stayed with value. If you still remember, the soldier of the 90s, it was when you see a soldier, you're like, oh, that's a soldier. When you see a policeman, it was, whoa, like it was policeman. Right now, nowadays, I don't know.
They've been devalued.
I don't know whether we're now raising another issue whereby our policemen, probably after conducting a roadblock, after that now, they're now actually saying...
They're waiting for civilians to give them transport.
The same vehicles, they were actually what?
Yeah.
Suing during the day. They
the
want transport again during the evening. So... that balance now is not there. So what what I just think is things in Zimbabwe are overvalued.
That's
We are
very true.
used to 100% profits. 200% profits. You'll be scared to just notice that probably a suit which is being taken from Turkey at $70, $60, when it's now in Zimbabwe, it's valued at $300. And I think just everything in Zimbabwe is expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, you know what? Let me jump to the last point that you said in line with what you're saying. Our biggest problem that we've had
Currency.
as Zimbabwe is currency. Because everyone knows in economics, any note or coin released by a central reserve bank will always find its way back to that central reserve bank. Look at how many notes have disappeared from our notes platter. They've always made their way to the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. The same can be said about the Central Reserve for America. All the money that they've dished out, it will find its way back there.
Exactly.
If you were to tear a dollar, a US dollar, or a $5 note or a $20 note, we don't have the resources to repay it or maybe to replace it. It finds its way back to America. So what it means is we have taken a functional note out of the Zimbabwean economy and taken it back to America. So what then remains? There's nothing. For example, if I mop this table and clean it,
Exactly.
and then you pay me in US dollars, then I use that money to buy something from eBay, from Amazon in America. What is there to remain to attest that there is that $20? Because tomorrow that table is going to be dirty, it needs to be cleaned.
100%.
So I feel like America is exporting its inflation to us, and they are taking our resources and their money back. Because really, if we don't have anything to show for the money that was once here, then it means that we've been robbed.
That's true.
That's essentially what it means. And the most disturbing part is, I don't know how they managed to do it, but of all the African countries, do you know that there are very few countries that can transact within their own local currency? What I can confidently speak to are the countries that joined the Rand community. You can easily transact between South Africa and Namibia because they use the Rand. But the rest of African countries, for us to transact for the electricity with Zambia, we use the USD. The quotation and invoices, they're settled in USDs. But we share the border, we share a dam where we generate electricity together. But we need to go over the continent. For us, our own African leaders, for them to travel to say they are going to the headquarters for African Union in Addis Ababa, right? The per diems and travel expenses,
US
they are
dollar.
settled in America. We need America. So everything that we do, it involves America. And up until we win ourselves off the USD standard, we are going to be having the same conversation.
Isn't it what Mama Gaddafi wanted to do?
That's exactly what he wanted to do.
And what did you do?
He was assassinated.
With the help of what?
The Americans.
Africans.
We killed our
Actually,
own.
the Africans were celebrated that no dictator is finally.
Is dead.
And also, I've got a question. What is the definition of a dictator?
So I think we need to define context. You know, definitions, this definition, they need context.
Exactly.
We need to look at the American definition of a dictator, and we also need to look at the African context. So in America, by their standards, they say if someone is said to be a dictator, they forcefully impose their personal opinions, their personal beliefs, and their way forward on the citizens outside of their will. That's what they call a dictatorship. But then I'm coming to Africa, where
But why are most of the dictators in Africa?
Who's doing
in the third world?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So to answer that, before I jump to the other part, I want to ask you a very simple question. If you love mangoes and your neighbor has got a mango tree, but then the mango tree is positioned in such a way that it blows leaves to the other household, which is not your house. The other house, the third house from you, that's where the leaves are going. But this guy's own the mango tree. And then this person who owns the mango tree and the neighbor who's getting the leaves in their yard, they are fighting. And then you love mangoes. Is it not in your best interest to say, no, wait, please don't fight. Let's try to resolve this. Why don't I'll give you a broom so that when your leaves fall over to that other house, you can go and sweep.
Exactly.
And then, when you resolve the conflict, they'll say, you are a good friend. You can have some of our mangoes. So that's the relationship that America has with Africa. They've got interests in Africa. They've got things that they want, resources that are scarce in America but abundant in Africa. So they will take advantage of the conflict. Any minimum crying from a country that is the resources that they want, they'll amplify it. No, he's not paying attention to this group of people who are saying A, B, C, and D. And next thing, they are even supplying ammunition so that they've got rebels that rebel against the government.
He's a dictator.
And then they label that person, they label them a terrorist, all sorts of dubious things, and even impose sanctions on that person. And guess what? The next thing, Africans, we are going to be excited, divide and rule, then we kill our own and then we celebrate. But look at where Libya is now.
Exactly.
Compare it, the leadership between...
They used to have everything. School fees free, health system free. And I heard that women are actually given money for giving birth.
National service.
National service.
It was the government that was paying.
Not the
entrepreneur. I mean, we can talk about this
subject.
But
the dictatorship, guys, we need to think about there. Because to me, you see, so is Queen a dictator?
I don't know. Is she?
She doesn't get away from power easily.
She carries a lot of power. She holds a lot of power.
Exactly. You know, British Army cannot be deployed without the Queen's signature.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's now the king right now.
Yeah.
And what about why don't they call the guys who rule Saudi Arabia dictators? Because they've got money.
Yeah. Because those guys, they really impose religious
why they
beliefs
don't
on people.
call the Chinese president a dictator? Because they're scared.
They will
never say dictator.
It was only Trump who said it's the Chinese virus.
They will never say dictator because they're scared. But it's a life president.
Yeah. For the longest.
Exactly.
And they actually have one party in China.
And right now they're saying Xi Jinping is going to be our life president. He's a life president right now.
Willfully.
But you see, Chinese are proud of their nation.
Yeah, they are.
I've never seen a Chinese who speaks ill about China.
True. And you know what?
Never.
To a point where people actually believe that there's nothing wrong. Do you know that there are homeless people in China? There are people who sleep on the streets.
There are also homeless people in America.
And but they just never show you that side of their country. And they carry their flag with so much pride.
But Africa were very good at doing that. But anyway, it's a story for another day.
Let's wrap up the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this episode of Jailbreak Africa, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share the video so that you don't miss out on other uploads that we'll be making. You know, the conversation about properties in Africa, it's so deep. There's actually a topic that I wanted us to talk about, but I left it out. The one to do with the Blue Carbon Company, the United Emirates, the UAE company coming in to buy up land in Africa. You know, they've bought up land that is the equivalent to the size of England. But we'll talk about it next week.
Thank you.
They want to protect it and do these carbon credits conversations and all. So that's something that you can look forward to next week. We're going to be looking into that conversation. So please share, subscribe, and give the video link to your friends and family so that they can also partake of this knowledge and wisdom that we share on Jailbreak Africa. Otherwise, from me to you, peace out. See you.